No Mariners game tonight, so we're going to use the off day to look back on their first month of the season. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Thursday, May 2nd, 2024. This is Ty Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, brought to you by Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. Join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store and Google Play. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. Subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you're part of the crew and rock with us every single day, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon. You can now get a free 7-day trial to check out the show. The link, as well as our social accounts, is in the description of this episode. And on this episode, we are going to look back on the first month and some change of the Mariners 2024 season. And we're going to look at some of the weaknesses of the team and dissect if that's something that will eventually work itself out, or something that may lead to the Mariners having to look outside of the organization to make some changes, or even within the organization to make some changes, and just give you overall our impressions of the first month of the season as well. So let's start with the offense. They were not great in the first month of the season, to put it lightly. They finished tied ninth in the league in WRC plus, ninth worst rather, in WRC plus, 93 WRC plus, tied with the Nationals there. They were bottom 5 in pretty much every category. They were the worst, of course, in terms of strikeout rate. But there is a positive-ish spin on that. Since game 1 of the Red Series, when they started going on this series win streak that they're on right now, 112 WRC plus, that's 6th in Major League Baseball. They're slashing 232, 312, 405 during that time. They're still leading the league in strikeout rate, which is still a problem, but they're also walking a lot to kind of counteract that a bit. 10.1% walk rate during that span, 4th in Major League Baseball. But overall, not great. Every position group, aside from third base, go figure, for the Mariners, finished below average in terms of WRC plus, below 100 WRC plus. So, Colby, what were your impressions of the first month and change for this Mariners offense? And then, what do you look at in this offense that you think will eventually work itself out, and what do you think might need to change over the coming months?
Yeah, the offense wasn't very good. I mean, we can spin it any way you want. It wasn't very good. They struck out way too much, but that wouldn't have been as big of a deal if they were also hitting doubles and home runs, but their slugging percentage is way down as well. Obviously, their batting average. It's tough to hit for a good average when you strike out a ton. Traditionally, the more you put the ball in play, the more hits you get. Crazy, I know, but that is what the strategy was supposed to be this winter, and it just really hasn't worked out that way. So the offense has undoubtedly been disappointing. We've seen glimpses of what the offense was supposed to look like, and we've even seen that offense for 3 or 4 days in a row before it inevitably collapses back in on itself. So, right now you're not getting. I don't think you're getting enough damage. Like I think you're getting a fair amount of base runners, especially lately. You're getting enough guys on base. You're just not driving them in. You're not getting them in. So that's a consistency issue. And it's very similar to what we saw last year, where the offense overall was fine. They scored enough runs, despite the strikeouts, but they didn't have a consistent, benchmark that you can count on repeatedly to continue to score 4, 5, 6 runs a game. It would be 9, 1, 2, 1, 1, 9, 8, 10, 2, 3. And you're just like, I don't know what I'm going to get on a daily basis. So it's a little similar to that right now, but I kind of look around and I say, where are the problems and what do I expect to be kind of fixed in-house? I think Julio's better than a 90 WRC plus. I think we can all agree on that. I think Cal Raleigh will eventually find a kind of a level footing where he is just, more consistently good. He's always going to be a little bit of an ebb and flow hitter because it was swing and miss.
Yeah.
But
He's been one extreme of the spectrum and the other,
He's been like unplayable and like the best player in the world all in the same like week. So Raleigh needs to find some consistency, and I think he will. Polanco is just way too good of a hitter, throughout his career to just kind of hit 180. And he's surviving right now. He's giving you something because he's hit some home runs. He's drawn a ton of walks. So I expect him to see that average jump up by 50, 60 points here. And then I think when JP Crawford comes back, he'll at least be average at the plate. And he was starting to figure things out before he unfortunately went on the IL. So I do think that, up the middle, I actually feel pretty good about where they're at offensively. And areas I'm not sure they have answers for right now are on the corners, first base, right field, left field, kind of, and DH kind of. Like, I'm just not sure if they have the right mix there. And I'm not sure if they have the guys in their system to just kind of fix that long term, like for the rest of the season in-house. Do they have some guys who might be able to help for the next, couple months until you can get to the deadline? I think they do, but I don't think that they just have like the answer to all their problems is just in the minor leagues. I don't think that's the case here.
I think this team could really use some more speed on its roster. And we saw what kind of a benefit that can give them with the small sample of Jonathan Clase, who they decided wasn't ready enough for them to justify putting him in the lineup consistently to extract that speed. So it's probably going to have to be someone else at some point this season, but that speed did make a difference. The ability to make things happen on the base pass, to get that extra base on a single into left field, for example, etc. And really, like, right now it's Julio, it's Dylan Moore, it's Luke Raley. That's really where all of your speed comes from on this roster at the moment. Now Haggerty, of course. Right. But I think eventually they're going to need someone that you could feel better about at the plate than a Sam Haggerty, that can get on base more consistently than a Sam Haggerty.
It would also be great if they were an above average outfield defender, because they need some outfield defense as well.
So it's possible that could be Ryan Bliss. It's possible that could be Samad Taylor. It's possible that could be Cade Marlowe, which does bring us back to the corner outfield discussion here. So we talked a lot about Mitch Haniger yesterday. The defense has been horrific. 4 or 5 out of the last 10 games. And obviously Mitch has been very critical of himself. He does recognize that, he has been an issue out there, and it's something that he said he's going to work on. But with just who Mitch is physically, I don't really see how that's going to get significantly better in terms of the range, in terms of the ground that he can cover, etc., which we've seen crop up as a problem, especially yesterday, especially against the Diamondbacks. That's not going to change. So they do need someone that can cover more ground out there. Do you think that guys in the organization, is that Cade Marlowe, or do you think they're going to need to go outside of the organization at some point this year to find that guy?
I think that guy right now is Cade Marlowe. He is a guy who can actually play center field a little bit, so he can definitely handle a corner. He's, made some really great plays out in center field down in Tacoma this year. Like, he's a guy who can make those plays, get to the balls that Haniger can't even get to, and convert some, loud contact into outs, whereas Haniger, he just cannot. And I think also when you look at Marlowe, you talk about a guy who, you're looking for that speed element, a guy who can come off the bench and steal a bag, a guy who I can put in late as a pinch runner, a guy who, when he puts the ball in play, there's pressure on the defense to make sure they field it cleanly and all that stuff. That's Cade Marlowe. He's also hitting for some power now. The strikeouts are elevated. He had 37 strikeouts in the month of April, which is just not going to cut it. But about 23 of them came in 1 week stretch, which is, whoa, like that's impressively bad. But, in the other 3 weeks, he's been fine. He's going to still strike out. He's got a little bit of an uppercut swing, but he's got power. He's got speed. And most critically, he has outfield defense ready to go. And that doesn't slump. So, when you kind of look at where Haniger is right now offensively as well, he's not making up for it at the plate at all. He is your worst player right now by far. And I think calling up Cade Marlowe and just at the very least knowing that you can go into the 7th inning and have Marlowe in left, Julio in center, and Luke Raley in right field, I think that's going to help you prevent more runs, which again, because the offense is struggling as much as it is, preventing runs is kind of close to scoring runs. They're almost the same thing. A run prevented is a run, scored. Essentially, right now it has to be. So I do think that Marlowe is the answer, and I don't think that means that Haniger should never play. I think it means that Haniger should go back into the role that we all thought he was going to fill. Hit against lefties, maybe play 3 times a week, be the veteran presence and all that. Maybe get a DH day in there too, so he gets 3 or 4 games played a week. He needs to do that because right now he's on pace to play like 154 games, and it's not going to work. And we're already seeing this guy wear down. So to me, Marlowe is the answer here. Short term. Long term, I think they got to go outside the org. And thankfully for them, when it comes time, when teams start to trade pieces, the corner outfield bats, they're kind of a dime a dozen. You can go get those guys every year. You can go get your Tommy Pham. You can go get your Mark Canha, blah, blah, blah. And you can get them for nothing terribly expensive. So when you look at the corner outfield, I think part of the solution is kind of a platoon of Marlowe and Haniger for the short term. And then we'll see what happens when Canzone comes back at that point. But yeah, I think that's the short-term answer is Marlowe needs to come up. He needs to play a little bit. Haniger needs to sit a little bit, not only because of his defense, but also for his own good, for his health, to just kind of maintain and kind of recharge here. Because right now the Mariners really don't have a choice but to play Haniger because they don't have Canzone, right? And they're already now Rayleigh's playing pretty much every day, so they can't.
And you're not gonna play Sam Haggerty every day.
No, you're not. And Samad Taylor has not hit at all down in Tacoma. Like if you think Marlowe's numbers are bad, and they're not great. But if you think his numbers are iffy, go look at Samad Taylor. He's not the answer down there either. So to me, it's Marlowe. That's the guy. And it's a Band-Aid, right? It's just a Band-Aid right now. But you need a Band-Aid because right now you're hemorrhaging.
So I want to ask you about Tai France and Mitch Garver a little bit. We'll do that in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by FanDuel and Monopoly Go. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and super easy to use. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. Again, that's FanDuel.com/LOCKEDON. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. I'm a very competitive person, and my competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times, but if not, it's a great twist on Monopoly where you play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. But the best part is messing with my friends. I can charge them rent on my iconic properties just like classic Monopoly, but now I can also rob their vaults of riches for myself. And the leaderboards show me who the biggest Monopoly tycoon is. But it's not just my competitive side that loves it. You can team up with friends and people all around the world in time tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now free on the App Store or Google Play. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. Mariners will get back after it tomorrow down in Houston. You can catch all the action between the Mariners and the Astros on the Mariners' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. All you have to do is search Mariners. So we are reviewing the first month and change of the Mariners 2024 season. Talked a lot about the offense, but I want to get to Tai France now. Let's talk a little bit about Tai, who has been hitting the ball hard like we talked about. I think some of his issues so far have been more of a launch angle problem than really anything. But the overall number is not great right now. 95 WRC plus. He's been worth negative 0.3 F4. So do you think the Mariners, who I'm under the impression they at least considered non-tendering Tai France this past offseason, do you think that there's a pretty short leash there and we could see maybe Tyler Locklear soon? Or look, right now in my way too early trade target rankings, I think Christian Walker is at the top of that list. I know we'll get a lot of questions about Pete Alonso as well in the coming months leading up to the deadline if the Mariners are obviously, looking to buy.
Paul
But
Goldschmidt, et cetera.
et cetera, et cetera, et
Josh
cetera.
Bell,
So
whatever.
how are you feeling about first base right now? Do you think Tai will eventually get it going and more slug will come from all the the hard hit balls that he's been producing, or do you think they're going to have to look elsewhere?
My concern with Ty, he's trying to get to this power that he thinks he has, and he doesn't. Tai France thinks he's a 30 home run guy. He's not. I think he's a 20 home run guy, and I think you're tapping out that power ceiling at 20. So, all the hard hit balls are great, but if he's hitting them all on the ground, those aren't going to turn into hits for Tai France. Like, the dude's super slow. Like, he needs to hit the ball on the line, and he needs to hit the ball in the air. But when he hits it in the air, it's more likely than not going to be an out. So, you're kind of in this weird spot with France where he hasn't been so bad that you feel like he's just dragging down your lineup, especially when you compare him to some other guys who have been legitimately bad. So I don't think we're at the point now where it makes sense to call up Locklear. Although Locklear has been very good. We'll talk about him in a second. It doesn't make sense right now because France isn't the big problem, but right now he's not part of the solution. And I think we're a couple months away from, the very least, the Mariners having serious talks about moving on from France in general, just going out and getting a first baseman. Could that be Tyler Locklear? If he has a couple more months like he had in April, maybe. But I think we're at least 2 months away from that. And 2 months is a lot of time for a guy who has the track record like Tai France has to kind of figure it out and get it going. But yeah, France is definitely.
Do you think we'll see? Sorry, yeah, France is on the hot seat. I agree, but do you think we'll see Locklear get a taste of Tacoma before coming up to the big leagues, or do you think they could call him up straight from Double-A?
It's interesting. The Mariners have been pretty aggressive calling up hitters from Double-A to the big leagues and pitchers, and for some guys it's worked. Like Julio didn't need AAA. Cal Raleigh did, and Kyle Lewis didn't need AAA. But Jared Kelenic did. It's just kind of one of those things where it's a case by case basis. So it's tough for me to sit here and say the Mariners will absolutely put him into AAA because we know how conducive that environment is to hitting. So how much are you going to learn there? But the pitching's also better. So it's kind of a double-edged sword here. I think what's most likely to happen is that the Mariners would call him up to AAA so that he's close, right? So that we can see him, we can keep an eye on him and all that stuff. He's down the road, so if we need him, he's there. So my hunch is that they would actually put him in AAA, but his stay in AAA might not. I think when they call him up to AAA, in their mind, they're saying he's really close to being a big leaguer. Mm-hmm. So I don't think they're just going to call with Class A, right? Class A not really that close to being a big leaguer, who can stay and be a big leaguer. But we'll put him in AAA for the challenge, and we like some of the things he did. I think once they make that decision with Locklear, it's okay, any second now, Locklear could be on the big league roster because that's a pretty aggressive jump for a guy who can literally only play first base.
So then let's talk about Mitch Garver. He's actually been fine at T-Mobile Park. It's just on the road. He has, I believe you posted the other day, a 7 WRC plus on the road.
Mm-hmm. Like we all predicted.
Right. After his, 0 for 35 or whatever it was at T-Mobile Park in his career before he made his Mariners debut. So what do you make of him so far? Because you did include DH as one of the spots that you're at least semi-concerned about right now.
Right. I don't know if there's an answer on the roster, or in Tacoma or whatever. There could be one in free agency. Mike Ford, huh? Anybody want to double dip on Mike Ford? I kind of don't. Yeah.
Well, and then the thing too is you can't move on from Garver, paying him too much.
Yeah.
He's on the roster guaranteed next year. Mm-hmm. There's nothing you can do about it.
You just gotta find a way to make it work. With Garver. So
and you need him. Just flat out, you need him.
Because right now, when I look at this Mariners lineup as it sits right now, they need to add a number 3 hitter and a number 5 hitter. Well, Garver could be one of those guys. Because right now they've basically gotten very little from Garver. So if they just get 2023 Garver, well, there's your number 5 hitter, or maybe even your number 3 hitter, depending on, what year Garver you get. So
Mm.
Garver can certainly be part of the solution. Right now, he's part of the problem. Although we have seen, again, it's continued with Garver, right? One big step forward and then two steps back, and he's just kind of in this cycle where you think he's found something and then it's right back. So he's kind of trying to work through that right now.
Mm.
But I don't see the answer here for him, because I think if you're going to call up Locklear, right, I think he's playing for Tai France, because I would rather take a chance on Garver's upside and him reaching that and getting back there than Tai France upside, which based on the last, I don't know, let's see, second half of 2023, all of last year and the first month of this year is like a league average bat, which is not good for a first baseman, particularly one who gives me zero value defensively and actually hurts me on the bases. So, I'm going to take a shot with Garver. I'm going down with Garver at least until like July, when I might actually be able to go get somebody to help out there. But I don't think there's anybody in the org that can do that right now. Despite Locklear's very impressive month of April in a really pitcher-friendly ballpark.
Right. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the pitching here in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by PrizePicks. Baseball season is in full swing, so don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond in your PrizePicks entries. Whether it's strikeouts, RBI, or first inning runs, take your pick of more or less and add them to your PrizePicks entry today. You can also get in on the basketball playoff action and win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks as you and the world's best players take the game to a whole new level during the postseason. Speaking of hoops, I'm taking Tyrese Halliburton more than 19.5 points tonight as the Pacers close out the Bucks. Download PrizePicks today and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. And once again, the Mariners will get back after it tomorrow down in Houston. You can catch all the action between the Mariners and the Astros on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. All you have to do to find that is search the word Mariners. All right, so let's talk about this pitching staff, and let's just start with the rotation, which we're not really going to have much of a discussion here. I just want to talk about how good they've been real quick.
Sure.
So from the start of the season to April 9th, which was George Kirby's rough start in Toronto, they were 26th in the league in ERA, 5.21 ERA, 4.05 FIP. That was 15th in the league. They had allowed the 5th highest opponent batting average of any rotation in baseball, 263 opponent batting average. They were 10th in K percentage, and they had the 3rd lowest walk percentage. So those numbers were more than fine. But then, from Logan Gilbert's start in Toronto to the end of the month, 1.67 ERA, first in Major League Baseball by a mile. Second place, 3.14 ERA.
Almost twice as good.
No one finished in the twos. Incredible. 2.95 FIP, first in the league, of course. 167 opponent batting average, first lowest. 29.2% K percentage, first by a mile, once again. And then 6.2% walk rate, second lowest in the entire league. So yeah, Mariners rotation, pretty good. Detroit.
Oh, well, that makes sense. Detroit's got a good rotation.
Yeah. So bullpen. Bullpen's also been pretty good. Every single guy in the bullpen is running a sub-3 ERA through the first month of the season. But they're obviously not at full strength. Doesn't seem like they're going to get Matt Brash back this year. We'll see on Gregory Santos. I think he's getting closer to ramping up. But again, things can crop up once he starts throwing again, etc.
Look at Matt Brash.
Yeah, exactly. So that's no guarantee. But Andres Munoz has had a couple blow-ups, but he's also had some really huge moments this year as well. Most recently, Game 2 against the Braves with the 5-out save. Gabe Spire has taken a significant leap this year and has established himself as a high-leverage arm and arguably the best lefty reliever in baseball this year early on. Ryan Stanek's been kind of shaky, but for the most part, he's gotten the job done. Awesome Voth has been solid. Trent Thornton's been solid. Taylor Saucedo's been really solid. They've gotten really good production out of this bullpen, but I know you believe that as at a certain point they need to go add another high leverage dude. So talk a little bit about that.
I think they're 2 high leverage guys short. Now, the good news, I guess, is that they might possibly have one coming back off the IL in Santos. So maybe they only need the one, but Stanek is not a high leverage guy. He's too inconsistent, with the walks and all that stuff. He really struggled this year to finish innings. He'll get 2 outs and he'll look pretty good, and he'll get 2 strikes on the last guy. And then, oh no, it's 3 straight balls. And then he lays in a fastball and there's a single, and it's kind of unraveled on him when somebody gets on base. So he's too inconsistent to be treated like a high leverage arm. I understand why they have to do it right now, but ideally he's like the 5th guy, because you would, in theory, right, you would go Munoz, Brash, Santos, Spire as your top 4. Well, Brash is down, we assume, right? And we can't really count on Santos until we see it, until we see him pitching for the Mariners. We can't count on it. Middle guys, I think you're totally fine. Now they want to, if Hunter Strickland is just out there for free, yeah, go get Hunter Strickland, bolster the middle, fine, whatever. But I think you need a guy who is closer to that Paul Sewald level than, somebody who's closer to that Trent Thornton level. I think adding another middle guy, or more specifically, you need somebody closer to Sewald and not as close as Stanek, right? I think there's a separation between those two. Stanek to me is a mid leverage guy, mid high leverage, maybe in an emergency. Sewald's a high leverage guy, right? And that he's not the highest leverage guy, but he's a high leverage guy. So there's kind of a bit of, labeling and it's beauty in the eye of the beholder, blah, blah, blah. But to me, they need another guy who can essentially, like, in layman terms, like, you put him out there with a 1-run lead in the 9th, you feel totally fine that he's going to get that save. There's going to be teams that are going to fall out of this. There are going to be teams who are kind of fringy in it, but it still makes sense for them to trade, a bullpen piece like the Mariners last year. There's going to be teams like that this year as well. So you trust Jerry with the bullpen pretty much completely. But can you go get, Pete Fairbanks or somebody like that? Can you go get Paul Sewald? Can you go get whatever, somebody better than Stanek, essentially, is what I'm looking for. Yeah, that works too.
All right. So that is going to do it for our show. Before we get out of here, a reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Ty Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Ty Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11, that's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Thank you again for making us your first listen. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.